Choosing a new road bike used to be so easy, but these days, not so much. And one of the big decisions to make is a choice between a lightweight road bike or an aerodynamic road bike. And some bikes that sort of blur the lines between both, so which is right for you? Well, let's debate it in today's video and talk about the pros and cons of aero or the lightweight and which might be right for you. And let me know your thoughts by dropping a comment down below. And a talking point for this topic comes from the recent Tour de France, where Tadej Pogacar rode the entire race aboard the Aero Carnago, the radical Y1 RS. And this is a really big deal because in the past at the race, we would often see the top riders on an aero bike on the flatter stages for max aero, and then when they reach the mountains, swap onto a lightweight climbing focused bike to really keep the weight as low as possible. And the reason for this is, well, there are two reasons. It's partly because the pros have this UCI weight limit of 6.8 kilos for the entire bike. So if you have an aero bike and a lightweight bike that weighs 6.8 kilos, the aero bike is an obvious choice. And also the other big reason is because Tadej and the other top riders are riding up mountain climbs so fast that aero still matters. And often they're riding up these mountains faster than most people on their flat roads. So that weight limit from the UCI and the speeds they're climbing at, making aero a more common choice as we saw this year. So yeah, really interesting. But outside of the Tour de France bubble, for us regular people, there are different considerations. One, we're not riding up climbs as fast as Tadej, so that's a big factor. And we can buy and ride a bike that's lighter than Tadej can legally ride. So for example, from the shop, you could buy a Specialized S-Works Athos at 6.2 kilos, a Tarmac SL8, 6.7 kilos, or a Scott Addict RC at 5.9 kilos, so way below that UCI weight limit. And that question of aero versus lightweight has a different context when you can buy a bike that's 5.9 kilos than if you're restricted by a UCI weight limit of 6.8 kilos. And that's why, while copying the pros is still a very popular thing indeed, in this case, when we can buy and ride a bike that's way lighter than Tadej can legally ride, it perhaps isn't so relevant or so useful to see him riding an aero bike everywhere because we're riding slow up the climbs and we can have a bike that's lighter than him as well. So as we saw at Tour de France, the pros have some very clear reasons why they've been choosing aero bikes on all the stages where typically they go for a lightweight bike, getting the bikes down to that UCI weight limit. And while in the past aero bikes came with a big weight penalty over a lightweight bike, these days a good aero bike is as light as a lightweight climbing bike. So for example, a top of the range Canyon Aero CFR is 7 kilos and a Specialized Tarmac SL8 is 6.7 kilos. Trek Madone SLR is still quite heavy at 7.3 kilos, but you can see you can get an aero bike that's down to 7 kilos, maybe sub 7 kilos with a few changes here and there, some nice trick components. But a lightweight bike like a Specialized Athos or a Scott Addict RC is still lighter, has a lighter frame, or Giant TCR Advanced Pro is another example of a bike that's still lighter than an aero bike, but given the advances, the improvements in aero, and keeping their frames as light as possible, we are seeing aero bikes now truly lightweight. And some brands now, as we all know, have merged their once aero and lightweight bikes into one frame, like the Trek Madone SLR, the Specialized Tarmac SL8, and a few others. But brands like Canyon, Giant, Merida still do a lightweight bike, they still do an aero bike, and haven't taken that move to merge the two, because I guess I still think there are more aero gains we had and more lightweight gains we had than they can achieve in one unified package. And it's worth talking about the tipping point of aero versus lightweight on a climb, and it does vary quite a bit depending on how you do the maths, but roughly speaking, you're looking at a climb with a gradient of up to 7%, given a reasonable speed up that climb, where aero still matters, where aero is going to gain you more on that climb than a lightweight bike. But above 8-9%, aero gains fall away as your speed decreases and weight becomes a factor. And I know personally speaking, living in the Cotswolds where lots of climbs are 10, 15, 20% on those steep climbs. I know the aero benefits are long gone, and it's all about weight. And weight is definitely something you can feel, and you are fighting gravity. And I know that body weight is more important than bike weight, but bike weight is still a factor as well. And it's also how it feels, which we'll talk about in a minute. So you can do the maths on an individual climb of which bike will be faster. We know the pro teams are doing all the maths. They've got all the data on wind speed and aero gains and bike weight for a climb, and also the entire stage, because that's the other factor. You can do the maths on a climb and figure out which bike can be faster for you if that's your goal. But it's worth remembering that roads go down and they also do flat, and they also do sort of flowing, undulating, bumpy roads, whatever you call it. So it's about picking a bike that can be faster over the entire course if you're doing a Grand Fondo, a Sportive, or a road race. And while you might have some climbs where weight is going to be a factor, and while you might have some steep climbs where weight will gain you more than aero, you might have enough flat roads or descents or rolling roads or punchy climbs where the aero can be a bigger benefit. So you have to do the maths on the entire route to figure out where your choice lies between aero and weight. And I know for the riding I have here in the Cotswolds, the roads are flowing, they're never flat, always rolling, and some punchy climbs. And while the weight is definitely a benefit on the steep climbs, on the rolling roads where your average speed can be 40, 45k an hour in a good group, then the aero gains are definitely going to get you to that climb faster than a lightweight bike on paper. But the choice between aero and lightweight, I think, comes down to personal reasons. I know some people, they like to measure the watts. They want to know they're on the fastest bike. All the marginal gains have been accounted for, and it is as fast as you know. But some people prefer the way a lightweight bike feels. Some people are still weight weenies, and there are lots of weight weenies out there, even entire forums dedicated to saving weight and measuring every single component of a bike. And that's another sport in itself, really, isn't it? And that's the way a bike feels, which is very subjective, and I know. But a lightweight bike, you can measure a lightweight bike on the scales more easily than you can measure an aero bike in a wind tunnel at home. But it's also how a lightweight bike feels. And I've been fortunate to ride lots of bikes, from lightweight bikes to aero bikes. There's no denying how fun riding fast is and how fast an aero bike can be when riding fast, and that is fun in itself. But there's no getting away from how a lightweight bike feels beneath you. That feeling, even at low speeds where aero is not really a factor, just feels more lively, you can feel more nimble, more responsive, and it can feel more fun on the climbs, the way it moves around beneath you. And that feeling can be very compelling and a big reason to go for a lightweight bike over an aero bike. And that's definitely something to not discount if you are riding for fun. Lots of us do ride for fun. We're not racing, we're not measuring the watts, we are riding for fun, and a lightweight bike, while not as aero, can feel more fun to ride and be a more enjoyable, pleasant experience. And I had this when testing the Giant TCR Advanced Pro Disc and a Specialized Tarmac SL8. So the Giant TCR is very lightweight, not trying to be aero really at all, while the Tarmac is trying to be lightweight and aero. And on paper and in the wind tunnel, in testing by Tour Magazine, the Tarmac is indeed more aero and therefore faster. But the TCR was more sprightly. It just felt nicer, more nimble and lively on the climbs, and it was a more enjoyable bike on hilly terrain. So that isn't something to discount. If you like the way a bike feels, you care about how a bike responds beneath you, that is something to definitely factor in, and something I always look for when reviewing bikes here on Just Ride Bikes. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, make sure you do by hitting that button down below. But aero bikes, my goodness me, are they fast. When you wind them up, they are rapid. And when I do my local chain gang, where you're riding at 45 kph, an aero bike really feels amazing. And not as good on the climb perhaps, and maybe not so good through the corners, but when you're crouched down aero, they really absolutely fly along, and that's a really fun feeling. But aero bikes often come with a few trade-offs compared to lightweight bikes, and that's namely the weight, Sometimes the ride quality can be harsher because of the big tube profiles compared to a lightweight bike, and they can be more of a handful in crosswinds because bigger tube profile catch a wind more compared to a lightweight bike with smaller tube profiles, and they can feel compromised when not riding flat out fast if you're just riding, cruising around the country lanes on a Sunday morning. So given all that, which bike is right for you? Well, as always, it depends. You might be very firmly in the Aero camp or very firmly in the lightweight camp. But what's clear is that choosing a bike is trickier than ever before. But I do think the move towards one bike that can do it all, be both aero and lightweight, is a smart move. I think it's a sensible move, but I see from the comments that people prefer an all-out aero bike or an all-out lightweight bike, and that hybrid, like a Tarmac or a Madone, is a bit of a compromise, and that's that's a valid point indeed. But it does make choosing a bike easier if it's pretty lightweight and it's pretty aero. And the Tarmac, I know the Tarmac is talked about a lot, but it is definitely a benchmark bike as a bike it is fast and it is lightweight and does ride in a really nice, fun way. And yeah, it's a bike that, as always, easy to recommend. But that's not the point of this video, not to recommend one bike over the others. There are merits to aero bikes and lightweight bikes, and which you choose come down to, it's best to do a list of pros and cons. What are you looking for in a bike? How much do you value comfort, speed, aerodynamics, weight, climbing, handling? All those factors can help push you towards one bike over the other. And it depends where you live and where you ride as well. So drop a comment down below, let me know where you live and where you ride. Do you live in the mountains where you're riding an hour's climb, where weight would definitely be a factor? Or do you live somewhere pound flat, like Florida, where an aero bike would be the obvious choice because you have no hills at all? And where I live is somewhere in the middle, where you can make an argument for an aero bike or equally a lightweight bike or something in between. So, and it depends on the rider as well. How fast do you normally ride at? What's your average speed typically? Do you ride in groups, chain gangs? Do you ride on your own? Do you actually race and pin a number to your jersey? Or do you just ride on a Sunday club run and have a cake stop halfway round and want a bike that just is fun to ride and definitely isn't slow and feels nice? So yeah, the debate between aero and lightweight is one that will rattle on for years and years and years. Really interesting to see what the pros are doing, and important to understand why they're doing that, which I think we all do, and that what they are choosing and the reason they're choosing their bikes doesn't really translate into the real world for us because we have different criteria. No weight limit, we can buy a bike lighter, and we might live somewhere hilly, might live somewhere flat, and we ride slower than Tadej Pogačar, who can ride so extremely fast. So yeah, I thought it'd be interesting to chat about aero versus lightweight and just reflect on the current status of the aero versus lightweight dilemma. And it is a dilemma for lots of people because my Instagram direct messages are full of questions of people asking what bike to buy, and often between lightweight and aero. And I love answering questions as much as I can, but maybe ask them here on YouTube so other people can maybe offer their advice and opinions as well. Anyway, that's all for today. If you want to share my thoughts on aero versus lightweight, and if you want to see a review of a lightweight versus an aero bike in the Giant TCR and a special Tarmac, then do watch the video right up here. But that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again very soon.